Welcome everybody to a brand new initiative, if you are listening, of course. And my name is Rohit, and I'm sitting here with two of my classmates and very good friends, Sushant and Shrujal. The three of us are master students in Germany. We are studying a course on computational mechanics at RWTH Aachen. And we are from India, from different parts of India. Shrujal is from Gujarat originally, and Sushant is from Chennai in Tamil Nadu. I'm from Bangalore, and we've been wanting to start a podcast for a very long time, and we thought one of the first things we can do is get together and brainstorm all our experiences of this almost 2 year journey of having come to a foreign country like Germany. What was our experiences? What are the mistakes we made? What are some tips? What are some tips for somebody who is planning to come to Germany to study, and things like that. So, without any more, let's welcome both of them onto the show.
Hi Rohit. Thanks for that introduction.
Yeah, you have to thank me for
Shrujal here. Sushant.
Yeah, this is Sushant. Welcome to our podcast, and we hope we'd give you all the information you need to start your life in Germany.
Yeah, so I think that was a very serious introduction. So maybe a little bit more about the personal side of our lives is on my free time, I'm usually exploring quite a lot of meditation and yoga and some of the spiritual aspects of life. I like exploring food and cooking, and I'm always learning something new. At the moment, I've been diving a little bit into cryptocurrencies and things like that. And Sushant is actually a very good upcoming stand-up comedian, and like all the girls go crazy for him in the crowds. And Shrujal, you don't have any like specific hobby, right?
I don't have a specific.
Yeah, he doesn't have a specific hobby, but whenever I spend time with Shrujal, we've always had like very deep existential and philosophical discussions.
I think this is the age where you have those kind of discussion with everyone.
And from a happy point, like we generally
Yeah.
people question stuff like when
One of the feedbacks that I always get is that I'm very calm. My voice is very calm.
That's true.
People think that I can handle stressful situations.
Shrujal is in a very phase of like exploring a lot of.
You should
lot of
consider
things.
changing your profession to psychotherapy.
Is it?
I think it would.
I would prefer to be a pani puri wala. I will get a lot of chicks there, and
Really?
then I can psychoanalyze.
Dude, chicks
them.
don't trust the bhaiya.
She'll call you Bhaiya then.
Yeah, she'll call you
That's
Bhaiya.
what I wanted.
Abort mission abort.
Abort.
In case you're not listening from India, bhaiya is a brother, and pani puri is a really good street food in India. And we have gone way off topic, but
Yeah.
anyway. So coming back, let's dive in. So how this episode is going to go is we have come up with different sections to this podcast. It's going to be a long format podcast. So grab some chai, grab some tea, and just sit back and just listen to it at your own pace. So we have different sections, and the whole podcast is about the whole journey from start to the end of coming to Germany. So this would be like deciding whether you should come to Germany or not. How can you prepare to come to Germany? Which colleges do you want to get which colleges do you want to apply, and things like that. So the first section is on deciding to come to Germany. So I'm going to throw out a question to you guys, is based on your experience so far, what do you think are some of the pros of coming to Germany?
Yeah. So the reason I decided to come to Germany was also two things mainly. One, I was finding it very boring at my job.
There's a pattern here.
Yeah, that's the pattern. And why I decided to come pursue my higher education after working for 4 years is that even if I switch jobs from whatever the industry that I'm in, I would just be doing the same old work with slightly a 10% increase in salary, which I didn't see that to be fulfilling or satisfying in any way. So I decided in order to challenge myself, just go and do a master's in one of the most reputed universities in the world. The second reason, which was also a underlying reason why I decided to go to masters, is because I was very dissatisfied with what I learned in bachelor's, and those were the two main reasons why I decided to come to Germany. And most, unlike Sujal, whose friends are some of his friends are here, most of my friends, like pretty much all of my friends who've gone abroad, have gone only to US. And from their experiences, I realized that education is just highly expensive, and it's just for 1 year or 1.5 years, and then it's just this mad rush to go find a job or your visa processing and all those things. And that is why I decided to come to Germany, because again, US is more welcoming to the computer science and electronic field, and the mechanical field would prefer to go to Germany. And my line of interest was also in product development and design, so that is the path I chose to come here and pursue it. The pros that I had expected before coming here were the low cost education and student friendly situation here, with slightly lesser expenses for health insurance, and you have that semester ticket where you can use the public transport as long as you're a student. Depending on which state you are, there are certain boundaries to its usage, and several other advantages that I experienced here are there are a lot of, I mean, I am not just a student of mechanical engineering over here, but I'm also able to experiment with several of my hobbies that I couldn't do in India, or I couldn't find the right place to do it in India. But this city being slightly less populated, less hustle and bustle compared to a metropolitan Indian city, it's much more peaceful, and you can pursue whatever you want over here. And those were my pros, or that I discovered after coming here.
Yeah,
and Rohit?
I have similar opinions as well, and I think for me the major pros were just the cost and the time you get after you finishing your education to search for a job. My thing was, if you go to US, you take a loan, the amount is much higher, and supposing there's a economic recession and you don't get a job immediately, it puts a lot of pressure on you financially. And coming to Germany, you might have to still borrow, but the amounts are much lesser, and it's still viable to go back to India and pay off that loan, even if it's a much smaller amount.
Yeah, well, now that you guys have talked about it, I think that was also one of the major points for me as well, like the cost of education.
Yeah. And the other thing is, the nice part is you get like 18 months after you graduate to find a job, which I think which is really good. I don't know how long that will last, but at the moment it's still there, this policy. And I speak to a lot of my classmates in US. One of my classmates had to come back to India because his visa was not cleared for his PhD program, and a couple of it's a common story whenever I speak to my friends, that there's always some pressure from the visa there's a pressure to get a job, this thing.
The problem with the US visa is that even if you get a job, it is the visa officials that determine whether that job is viable, for that only you as a foreign national can do it, and not an local person cannot do that job. That justification should be given by the industry that hired you, and that would make the getting a job visa in US much more difficult. Like, there's a lot of scrutiny. It doesn't just depend on whether you get a job or not. Here it's not that, it's not scrutinized as much. As long as you can find a job, you can get that residence permit that comes with that job. There's not much scrutiny that whether a foreign national or a German national should be doing a job or not.
Mm-hmm.
So the getting a visa after you graduate and when you get a job is not a big question mark when in Germany here.
So, yeah, those are some of the major reasons why many people choose to come to Germany. And let's look at the other side. So, what are some of the negatives of having to decide to come to Germany? Sushant.
Yeah, after coming here, some of the difficulties that I faced is one, the language. It's very difficult. I mean, not everybody knows German. Like students know English and they are friendly and they can talk to you, but you do need to know some. I mean, you have when you want to put forth certain points in offices and things like that. You need to know German. That language barrier is still there here. And the second con which I underwent is getting adjusted to the climate. Me coming from a very hot place in India, the winters are very, very harsh over here. And yeah, just invest in winter clothes, gloves, masks, and all those things. Those are the two cons in my point of view.
And yeah, to add on that, I would say the same thing, that language is not just for the students, but if you take a English taught program, you might have a brilliant professor who can teach brilliantly in German, but when he or she has to teach the same thing in English, they have to do that mental translation from German to English and then speak in front of a crowd. So I would often feel that the quality of the English taught programs is not at its like what it can be. I don't blame the professors for this, but yeah, it's just a part of studying in an English taught program in Germany. That was one con that I would say that you need to be aware of before you make a decision of coming to Germany. So Shrujal, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would say the language barrier is definitely a con for someone who has not studied any German before coming to Germany. But I would say we should also see it as an opportunity, right? Because once you learn the language, there are so many doors that opens for you, right? You can apply to a lot more EV jobs, student assistant jobs. You can apply to many more internships. So we should not put it into a con category.
I see your point, but it is a con because if somebody is deciding to go to US, this whole thing of language is just it's not something they have to bother about, you know.
Yeah, but so this is a decision which you have to make 6 months before coming.
Exactly. So yeah, that's what this section is about. Yeah, right. Deciding whether you want to come to Germany or not. So yeah, that is one thing you should be.
Other con is it's not very easy to find an apartment here. Right?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
It's not very easy to make local friends, the German friends also. Like if you are not very familiar with the language.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that is true. I have seen that Indians tend to group together like we are, and
what an irony.
And also the Chinese students, they tend to group together as a this thing. So yeah. The next section is once you have decided that you want to come to Germany, what are certain things that you can do to prepare yourself, mostly mentally. We'll get to the other preparation later, but just certain mindset shifts that I would have wished I had known before I came to Germany. So one advice that I would have for everybody, and this is something I tell to anybody who asks me about coming to Germany, is don't set foot in Germany without learning German. Learn as much as you can. So in German, when you learn German, there are different levels which go A1, A2, B1, B2 and so on. So even if all you're able to learn is just A1 before you come to Germany, just learn that and come. But if you have 6 months, 8 months, a year before your actual university would start, then really double down your time and effort to learn the language before you come.
Yeah. The funny thing is everyone knows this before coming to Germany, yet very few people learn the language and come, right? Like, guys, why so lazy?
Yeah.
That's, that's true. And even though your course is in English, most of the English courses would also offer a side-by-side German course in as a part of your curriculum, because it was there for us in Kame. And it is very difficult to handle both your coursework as well as German work.
Exactly.
Because some of my friends had really struggled even for A2 exams, A1 exams, A2 exams, while they are doing they had to study their courses also on the side.
Yeah.
So the best case scenario, if you do A1 to B1 from India, it's from wherever you're coming before starting your course, it's the best deal. And there are a lot of options in Goethe Institute and all those things.
Did you do your B1 in India?
Yeah, I had done my B1 in India
I had
before
also
coming
done
here.
Yeah, like I also did my B1. So like we all three of us like took all the same classes and we were able to complete our classes on time, right?
Yeah.
Like usually people doing German and classes together, they were.
I just want to add, in case you're just confused on the context, is even though you might study an English course, certain courses have a requirement that you should graduate with a certain level of German proficiency. So so the German course is a separate course that carries certain credits as part of your program, and if you get a certificate of the same level of proficiency from a recognized institute in your country, these credits are just given to you and you don't have to go for German classes. So that time, 2 to 4 hours a week is saved for you to either just sleep or do other classes, or it's available to you. That's what we were talking about.
Yeah. And consider learning German beforehand as an investment. I mean, it is expensive in certain institutes in India, but don't think of the cost at that time, because if you have to learn after coming here separately, that would be like 4 times or 5 times costlier. So if you could learn it in India, just consider it as an investment and learn it in India before coming here.
Yeah, also it's a huge advantage when you step foot in Germany if you already know German, right?
Yeah.
Because socially it's a very good advantage. It's easier to make friends, and also it's easier to maneuver around, let's say.
We take
daily
certain things for granted with our English knowledge, that when we come, that we realize how important those things are only after coming to a country which does not predominantly speak English. So you have to understand certain basic words and phrases like warning or emergency exit, things like that, which would at some point of the day save your life also. So you need to know all these basic things which you have to be aware before coming here.
And not just the fact that it's more expensive to do a language course here, but you also have the cost of missed opportunities that come from the lack of knowledge. So that and like anything, like whenever people travel from abroad back to India, you always do all your shopping there because things are cheaper, or in your home country if it is cheaper. So just make sure you come with don't land up not over here, without a single knowledge of how German works.
Yeah.
And another thing that I realized quite late was the culture in Germany is all about doing things independently. It's not that if you ask for help that it will be frowned upon, but they always, it's expected. It's more like an unwritten rule that you have tried doing it yourself first, and it was like you were not able to do it, and then you look for help. So for instance, when I shifted into the student dorm here and I needed some help setting up the internet connection, and I was like brand new and nervous and all of that, my first response was to knock on my neighbor's door and ask him like how to set it up. And he just told me, there's a wiki page for the hostel, just go there, everything's written there. And that was like an eye-opening thing for me, that everything is usually 95% of the time is documented with clear instructions on how to do it. You might have to spend a couple of minutes to fish those instructions out, but just start trying to do things independently, start researching things on your own before you can, go into that habit of asking someone else. And for instance, how much another funny story of how things happen independently here is in India, the city where I come from, in the grocery stores, when you're finished shopping at the cashier's desk, when you've scanned all the items, there is one person to scan the items and bill you, and there's another person to pack the bag and give it to you. So I was in that habit that somebody will pack my bags for me at the grocery store. So in my first week of Germany, after having settled in the student dorm, I went to the grocery store and I brought this big trolley full of like all food items and toiletries and all of that. And the lady finished scanning, and I just kept waiting for her to put it into a bag and give it to me. And yeah, it turns out that in German supermarkets you have to fetch the bag and you have to put everything in the bag yourself, and then go on. So that was one short experience of mine that shows how independent you're expected to be here. And Strugel had a very interesting point about the student-professor relationship, especially from the way things are in India and the way he found it here in Germany. So over to you to just share more on that.
I'll just give you a short example. In my bachelor's, like it was pretty common to complain about like a professor who is teaching bad. Like we just simply went to the head of the department and just complained about the teacher or the professor which was teaching a particular subject. And we will just say that, and everyone in the class will agree, right? That yeah, he's teaching bad. Let's go and complain. But here in Germany, if you decide to go and complain about your professor, I think all other students will frown upon it, right? Yeah. Like because they don't expect their teachers to. It's expected of them to learn on their own. I think like that's where self-independency comes here. Like self-independency is imbibed pretty early in their education. So teachers, they don't feel very pressured to teach their students,
They give like the guiding points and
they give the guiding points, and but I'm not saying that they are not knowledgeable. Like a professor who is teaching you has probably many years of experience in industry also. So any question that you ask, most probably he knows the answer. But the only thing is that you cannot expect him to
come to your level.
Yeah, dumb it down for you. Yeah. Like because some things he might not be explain it to you in a simpler manner. That does not mean that he does not know it. He or she does not know it.
I would like to add a point. If you do find that certain things are not you didn't understand certain things, you can always go to your professor and they'll always clarify it for you, provided you go and meet them at a fixed appointment. You fix an appointment before or go into their walk-in hours.
Exactly.
They are very, very particular that they would meet you only during these appointment hours or these walk-in hours, where you can go and ask them. And they do not have any arrogance like Indian managers or Indian people. They treat you like friends only. So you don't have to have any nervousness to go and talk to your professors. But the strict thing is you can't just walk into their office. You have to take an appointment or you have to go in at the specified walk-in hours.
And it's really important to go and ask questions, because that's how you build rapport with the professors. Because later on, when you're looking for internships or looking for jobs, it will be immensely helpful for you because all the professors' network will be at your disposal at that time.
Rohit, you want to add any points on student-professor?
He had a very good relationship with his.
I had a couple of good relationships that led to some really good opportunity. So I think nothing. I don't have anything more to add. You guys covered whatever I wanted to say. My experience has been the same as you guys. That it really makes sense to ask questions and interact with them, and also I had to learn the hard way to put in the effort first and be self-independent. The next point was a tip that was given to me by my senior who was studying in RWTH, and he said, I'm very grateful to him also for having said this, is the student dorms are the cheapest accommodation option available in pretty much every university city that you go to. But unfortunately, because the demand is so high, the waiting lists for these for getting a room in this student accommodation is really long. So one tip for you guys would be, the moment you've decided that you want to come to Germany, and the moment you've shortlisted which universities you're applying for, even before you submit the application to your university, go and research the student dormitory websites and create an account on these websites and get on the waiting list, because the waiting period is close to 1.5 to 2 years in Aachen, and doing this one step will just make it that much faster for you to get into a student dormitory. And supposing you get an admission in one city, just make sure to go and delete your names from all the other cities that you applied in, so that there's space opens up for the other students. That was one tip from my side, something that you could do early on to help you in your transition to Germany. Is there anything else you guys want to add? Because I don't have anything more in this section.
No, there only one thing, like when you apply for those positions in student and for the dorms, try to apply it in German and not English, because maybe that's a point, right? Because you have
a good point, yeah.
Right, because sometimes it does not go in the ascending or descending order, the list. Sometimes they pick randomly.
Yeah, and this is another place where your German language can be beneficial. Because
spoken like a dad.
Internet dad.
Because the thing is, your admission to a WG, Studentenwohnheim, student hostel, depends on the roommates you are sharing that hostel with.
Yeah.
So it would be like a floor and with a common kitchen, common bathroom, and 8 individual rooms. And those roommates will interview some 10 people for getting a room, and they would prefer someone who has at least a little bit of a German knowledge.
Yeah.
So it's these kind of things that your previous German knowledge would be beneficial to you. So yeah, think about it if you want to come to Germany
without learning German.
Yeah. It's very essential that you get a cheap accommodation, and not so much, you don't have to spend so much on internet and all those things.
Even landlords would be more comfortable
exactly if you can speak in German. Yeah.
So again, we're back to this topic on learning German. So we have actually compiled a series of resources that can help you learn German. These are apps, these are websites, these are extensions for your browser that you can install, and also a couple of good websites to get some good official translations in addition to Google Translate. So we would share all of these in the description somewhere below on whichever sites we upload this on. So just be sure to check that out. They're all free, so there's nothing to pay on these platforms. And we're moving on to the next section. So by now, we assume that you have really made the choice that you're going to come to Germany, and you've also been diligent, you're taking our advice, you're listening to your dad Sushant, and you're learning German.
Bapu tera baap.
So the next question obviously is, which college do I go to and which course do I study, and so basically that. So one thing you should really know is there are two kinds of universities in Germany. One is in German it's called Technische Hochschule, or in English it is a technical university. And we also have a university called the University of Applied Sciences. So what is the difference between both of them? Okay. Sushant has just written me a note saying that this is for engineers. Yeah, in addition, you also have medical schools and business schools and things like that. So, yeah, we are all engineers, so this is definitely going to be biased towards the engineers. So, yeah, these are two universities primarily for engineering, and the technical university is more about learning. It dives a bit deeper into the fundamentals. It's a bit more mathematical, bit more theoretical. While the University of Applied Sciences is more catered to learning relevant practical skills in the job market. So, for instance, the one analogy that I give to people to understand this concept better is in mechanical engineering, we often have a lot of softwares to carry out design and stress analysis and material modeling and things like that. So, on a mechanical engineering course in a technical university, you would learn the math and the programming behind these softwares, whereas in a University of Applied Sciences, a similar program, you would really learn in depth on how to use these softwares. You might go into the basics of the math, but the theory is more in the technical university than in the applied sciences. So that is one way to look at these two.
So in technical universities, you will learn about the back end of the software. So, for example, ANSYS, you will learn what are the models, what is the mathematics behind it. And in University of Applied Sciences, you will learn where you will use ANSYS, how you will use ANSYS in detail.
Yeah.
Right.
Project specific.
Yeah.
How you apply it to certain
It's more
projects.
applied.
Yeah.
It's more applied.
That's why applied science.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
we can only give examples on a mechanical engineering point of view also. So
Exactly. Yeah. So
we don't know
please
much
keep that in
about
mind.
electrical and electronics and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. And things also keep in mind is certain jobs will favor certain universities. So, like a production line job or something specific in that domain will generally favor somebody with more applied science degree than technical university. But if you want to go on a career in research and academia, maybe this can help you more than
So
applied
if you
science.
want to go for PhD, then I think if you have a master's from University of Applied Sciences, you will have to take extra credits. You have to take extra
Correct.
courses in order to go ahead with your PhD.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if you do a master's from a technical university, then you don't have to take any extra credits to go ahead with your PhD program.
And don't quote me on this, but this was something that I heard that in one of the University of Applied Sciences in Ingolstadt, where Audi is based, they have very close connections with the company Audi. So students actually, and as part of their university program, they get to work on the Audi production line and certain other aspects of the factory, and the skills they are taught in the university is very, very closely connected to what Audi does and these factories around Ingolstadt do. So the value of that degree is different from what
That is a University of
Applied Sciences.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the next 2 points is
Just one more point.
sorry.
And if you don't want to delve too much into the technical, there are also management plus technical courses available. If you want to go into some management / technical roles, I would suggest you look into those kind of courses where it offers both management subjects as well as technical subjects. These are also available in certain universities, and I think it will catch fire quickly in every other university also.
Yeah, so just be clear on the two kinds of universities before you apply and before you get an admit. And the next point, which is the major point that we discussed as the pros of coming to Germany, is the fact that a lot of university courses do not have a tuition fee. And Sujal wanted to share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I looked into it, Roy. Currently, out of 16 states in Germany, only one state has introduced tuition fees inside all the public universities that are inside their state. The state of Baden-Württemberg, where Stuttgart is. So universities like University of Stuttgart, Karlsruhe, Reutlingen, all these universities will have tuition fees inside them. Currently, there are no plans to roll out this tuition fee structure in any other states. There are being debates going on, but officially there are no plans, let's say, to roll out this in next few years.
Mhm.
So I don't think they will roll tuition fees for next at least 3 years
Okay.
for other states. I think they are experimenting with this with one state, and based on the response, they will move ahead with other
Mhm.
states as well. So right now in the state of Baden-Württemberg, they have a fixed fee for international students, non-EU, the students coming outside of Europe. They have to pay 1,500 euros per semester.
Which is still very affordable.
Yeah, it's still very affordable, right? It is actually cheaper or as costly as higher education in India, maybe, right? You pay maybe higher in IIMs or IITs. So irrespective of the course you are doing, like I'm talking about public institutions, not the private institutions. In private colleges you might have to pay higher, but in public institutions which are funded by the government, which most of the universities in Germany are funded by the state. So in those institutions, non-EU students will have to pay 1,500 euros per semester. Even bachelor students and master students, it's the same for everyone. But one of the things I found out that by looking at the official website for Baden-Württemberg, they have mentioned these let's say exemptions. Like there are some exemptions, like those who the people who are exempted not to pay, or you can apply for the exemption, from the tuition fees. For example, I think there are many points, but there are only 2 points relevant to us. The relevance to students coming from outside EU regions, because those are most of the exemptions were for the refugees and all the people living in Germany,
Mhm.
who have permanent residency in Germany. Like those are the people who are exempted from this. But people who has done their schooling or bachelor's outside Germany, if they are coming to Germany, then they will have to pay this. But if they plan to do an internship outside of their curriculum,
Mhm.
or if they plan to take a break or leave of absence,
Mhm.
then during that period they don't have to pay the tuition fees.
Okay.
So you have to prove that you have to prove the duration. You have to give the documentation and apply for the exemption.
Okay.
And I think it's pretty transparent. So you do if you plan to go for an abroad for a semester, for example, then I think you don't have to pay the 1,500 euros for that semester. Or you have to, if you plan to go for an internship, an extra internship,
Mhm.
then you don't have to pay 1,500 euros
Okay.
for that semester. That's the only thing
Okay.
that you need to know right now.
Yeah.
All other states, it's free.
Yeah.
Uh,
So the tuition, there is no tuition fee, but every university charges something called a semester contribution fee, which, like the name says, you have to pay every semester. And in Aachen, this is around 270 or 280.
282.
282 euros. And this gives you a lot of benefits like access to a student legal advisory, you get access to certain student bodies, you get, the most important benefit is you get either a discount, or in Aachen you get free public transport in the whole state and things like that. So if you don't have a tuition fee, your expenses really reduce down to your living expenses and just this semester contribution fee, and more. And Germany has a stereotype of being super organized and very clear-cut instructions for everything. And this was especially true with in my time when I was trying to search for which university to apply for. There is a very nice website called daad.de, which is spelled daad.de, and we'll of course leave a link to this as well. And this is a very nice website where every course in Germany is listed on this website, and it is more like a Amazon for university courses. I think it's mostly for public universities.
Yeah, even private ones.
Okay, even private ones are also there. So yeah, and the nice part is you can filter your search results. So you can say, I want to do a master's in mechanical engineering in English, how many year duration, how many credits, which location, and things like that. So you can figure out, what is what for that. And Once you click on a search result, they have everything in one place. So the fees, the application deadline, the criteria, and the coursework, some of the major subjects, all of that is listed in a very nice way so that you don't have to go to every university website to fish this detail out. Although you should, I would recommend you to also check out the university website. But as a preliminary step, this is a very good website that you should check out. And I think that's
like the only one website that
one stop that people do.
One stop solution.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Even if you go to a consultant, like he or she will guide you to this website only. So
it will also show whether the university and that course takes tuition fee or not. So just keep your eyes open for that.
Yeah, it's the perfect tool to plan your education.
Also, there might be DAD seminars in your city, so just go and visit that also to get some ideas.
Yeah.
Like there would be seminars coming to cities for encouraging students to come and study in Germany.
Correct. Yeah.
So just go there and check out, get some brochures, get the contact details of those personnel, and you can ask selective questions to them directly.
And also, DARD gives out a lot of scholarships.
Yeah.
And they also have all the information about scholarships on their website.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's also a very helpful point, right?
Yeah. The next section obviously is once you have decided which university you want to apply for, what courses you're interested in, it's all about the admission process. Of course, none of us have the magic answer to how universities decide on what criteria, but just a couple of tips from our experience, and this is a pet peeve of mine and a bit of a rant that this is mainly if you're from India, this is going to be more relevant for you, is India has this whole weird system of something called a consultancy. So these are basically you can outsource your entire admission process to a company. So they would draft your letter of motivation, they will beef up your resume, they will apply for you, they will even collect your degrees and post it for you. Okay, and I have seen consultancies in action, and in my opinion, they should be banned. And because it does a disservice to the student, because maybe something like that in India has worked, but in Germany, where you're supposed to be so independent and do things on yourself, if you can't write a basic letter, or rather I would say if you're not willing to write and get good at writing a basic letter, you shouldn't really think about doing a master's program. It requires a huge amount of responsibility, because especially when you come outside, you need to cook, you need to clean, you need to do everything by yourself over here. And if you're having that kind of an attitude, I don't think it gels well in my opinion. And many times, you might get sold a university course which is not right for you. I actually met somebody who had no idea that what course he was going to, that he was just recommended something and he just went with what the consultancy gave him. And you're also going to they don't know you, right? You probably don't know yourself fully, but some other person is going to write on your behalf, and it's always going to be a standard template with very flowery language, and say that your course has an admission interview, an interview process as part of the admission process. It will just cut a very sorry figure that you've written a very awesome flowery letter of motivation, and you can't match that level of communication on in the interview. So just be honest. You don't have to be flashy, and definitely use the internet. There are so many examples and ways you can learn how to write, and do that. My advice would be to not go to a consultancy. And Shojal wanted to say
yes, and I just wanted to add one point. You mentioned that you had a friend who didn't even know in which course he is going to. The consultancy offered him a course and he just took it. My point is, many people just want to leave the country. They don't care which course they do, right?
Yeah.
They have this mindset, especially in Gujarat, if you see, they have this mindset of going to US. Everyone wants to go to US.
Okay.
They don't care whether they go for an MBA or an MTech, right? They just want to go outside US and enjoy that Western lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I think consultancies are directing their business towards those kind of people. and your rant is let's say justified, but this is a whole different business
Yeah,
segment, right?
I
Like
agree.
people who are really serious about studies, I don't think they are attracted towards consultancies
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, so people who are really serious about studies don't entertain consultancies.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a judge for yourself
Yeah.
of how where you stand
mean,
in life.
if you are serious about your studies, you can surely write a
Yeah,
SOP,
yeah,
letter of motivation, build up your resume. Those things are just peripherals.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Even-
fine not knowing how to do it. That is, you can always learn, but you should just have the willingness to accept that you don't know and you want to grow.
Yeah,
That's it.
you can email the universities any silly questions you have. Like you can expect a reply from the universities within a few days.
Yeah.
You will get authentic answers. So don't rely on any other answers from any consultancies.
Correct. And that was also branching into my next point is that there are many Facebook groups, this masters in Germany, Indian students in Germany, where people ask each other about admission related information. So please, I mean, this is common sense. It shouldn't need saying, but I still have to say it because I've seen people do it. Is your Bible is the university website, and if there is any doubt, contact the university admission team. They will be the one to clarify it, and you don't try to imagine what they're expecting from this document and what you have to present. If something is not clear, just should call the university or email them, and yeah, usually they do a good job of stating everything very clearly. And if it's not for any reason, then just make sure to ask the university and not a Facebook group.
Amen to that.
Yeah, and people in the Facebook group cannot also evaluate your profile whether you will get the admission or not based on you have this much percentage in your bachelor's, you have this much work experience. Yeah, they are also students.
No,
And
but I've seen people share their entire profile on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Sharing your profile, I don't think, like even if you share your profile and somebody says, yeah, you will get it, and you apply and you don't get it, then yeah, you just wasted your time in that.
Yeah.
So just you shortlist your universities like ambitious, mediocre, and safe, and apply all three to all three types. If you get a good university, go there. It's as simple as that.
If you get a good university and choose to go to a bad university, please come on our podcast. We would like to meet you.
And one thing I would like to mention that I've seen people use unnecessary words inside their letter of motivation, right? Let's just try to keep it simple. The
Yeah.
level of English language, you're not expected to have that Shakespeare level of English
Yeah.
language in your motivation letter.
Yeah.
You can make silly grammatical mistakes. It's
Avoid
avoid grammatical
Yeah.
mistakes, but making grammatical mistakes will not guarantee a rejection.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
I would say one is fine, but if there are a series of grammatical posts, then it shows that you've not done the grammar check. So, yeah.
Yeah, and get your SOPs and letter of motivations proofread by other people.
Yeah. Because most of the time, people who think that they are not very good at English, they prefer to go to consultancies
Yeah.
because they think that consultancies can write much better SOPs for them. I just wanted to make that point that even if you just have to write
Okay.
the letter, you just put your points, your reasons in a coherent manner, and there should be enough.
Yeah.
Just make sure that you are not making any silly grammatical mistakes. Some mistakes are
Yeah.
pardonable. Right?
Yeah. You use Google to figure out how this thing works.
And I would also like to add a point that if you are just do your homework for at least a year. Be patient, research all your options. Sometimes when you go deep inside, you might not find the kind of course that you are interested in, and you would have a lot of requirements for what kind of course you want to do. So take the time, do the research, and parallelly do your German learning, and parallelly work on all your application documents, getting all the transcripts from your universities, all those things, in order to avoid the consultancy. Like plan it 1 year in ahead, all the finding the accommodations and all those things. And if possible, for those who are actually applying, I would suggest to find people who are going to the same universities, maybe a different course, preferably same course, maybe a different course. Meet up with them and exchange information so that you do not miss anything from your end. So, because I did it all on my own, and I had a lot of difficulty doing it because there was not many people coming from my place in that year to this university. So yeah, if you can find, I mean, there are all these social networking sites now. You can find people who are coming from your city to Germany or to the university that you are going to, or to that specific course of that university which you are going to. Meet with them, discuss with them, plan ahead. Maybe you guys can work together for getting the shared accommodations and all those things. And it's always nice to have a contact in this thing in your city. Also, if talk to people who have done that course in that university, who are doing that course, or who have done that course, to get a clearer picture of what that course offers. So these all come as a part of your homework, which you'll be doing over a year before your application starts. So yeah, take these things seriously and don't just brush it off if you want to avoid the consultancy route.
Yeah, and the next step in the process is getting an admit. So hopefully you had a good run, you had some good luck, and you got admitted into the course of your choice. All that, and future congratulations are in order. So the first step to do is, as soon as you get your admission, even before you start out your visa documents and all of that, is just start your search for the accommodation. So if you were lucky enough to get in on the waiting list way before you got your admission, now would be a good time to go and review your position in the waiting list. What are your chances of getting there? And you can email the student dorm if you have any questions on how these things work. So that is one route. And the other route is just called a shared accommodation in a flat, which has a very long German word. It's called Wohngemeinschaft, abbreviated as WG, or WG in German. And these are basically like a bunch of people, 2, 3, 4, sometimes more people get together, and each person takes a room in an apartment, and you share the bathroom and the kitchen. So there are a couple of websites where you can search for these accommodations. These are in German, and the way the shared accommodation works is, at least in India, the thing is, if somebody is willing to pay the rent, you just get together and you form the flatmates. But here it's a really nice culture where the people living there currently would like to meet you and get to know you a little bit. What is your personality? Are you the type who parties a lot, or are you somebody who plays a lot of board games and card games and things like that? So when you apply for these accommodations, don't just say like, yeah, I'm a student, I'm coming from India and I'm looking for a place to stay, but share a little bit about what are your hobbies, how can you contribute, how do you want to plan like the cleaning of the home and things like that.
So Rohit, when you applied for your VG or accommodation, what were the kind of questions that they asked to you?
Yeah, so this was exactly this, like how often are you like willing to clean the apartment, and are you okay like splitting the costs for like groceries, and then they also asked me like what are my hobbies, and the roommate, I found out he also loved to read, and he was quite philosophical, and so we used to actually just have armchair conversations with tea and things, and we had that vibe, like when you meet people, that you gel with them or you don't. So we had that chance to get to know that we both would be comfortable with living with each other, and then we made that decision to. So you have to be comfortable with them, and don't be afraid to like ask them questions about themselves also, and they want to be comfortable with you. Of course, if you're still in India or in your home country, you will have to schedule this on Skype. If you know somebody in the city, you can also ask them to visit if they agree to it, which is kind of rare. But yeah, those are certain things you can do. Don't make money transfers online until and unless you sign a contract. So that would be like you coming to Germany, signing the contract, and then or you have some way of them sending it to you by post. You have a physical hard copy with a real signature, and only then send it to a real verified bank account like Sparkasse or Deutsche Bank or something like that, which is trustable.
Yeah, and there are a lot of housing scams also going on, asking you to transfer money through Western Union transfer and all those things. Yeah, those are scams. You won't even meet there'll be some random excuse that the owner is in some other country, has some personal emergency, and they would ask you to transfer money via Western Union, money transfer and all those things. These are just scams. Just avoid them at all costs. As he said, go if you can, go to the place, go to the house, visit, have a talk with the owner and all those things, and sign the contract before transferring any kind of funds. So be wary of scamsters
Yeah, so basically don't transfer anything. No
till
matter
you
what.
sign the
Till you sign
contract.
the contract.
Till you sign the contract, till you have a bilateral agreement
Yeah.
that you are taking this home in agreement with the owner who's leasing that home for you. Once you sign the contract, then you can transfer the funds. But there are all these phone conversations which talking to an agent through the phone and all those things where they ask you to transfer money beforehand. Yeah, just avoid all those things. You'll just end up losing money.
Yeah. And the last step that can help in the accommodation process is there are a lot of Facebook groups. There are some Facebook groups specific for searching for WGs in each city. So WGs in Munich, WGs in Hamburg. There would be some groups like that. And also you can look up student groups. So anytime somebody's going out for a short holiday or they're going for an internship, you can sublet their apartment for a short period of time, like a month, or sometimes even as short as 2 weeks or up to 6 months. So this gives you like a place to land and settle into when you come into Germany. And once you're here, obviously it's much easier to search for accommodations, and that would be the preferred route as well.
Yeah, I used that facility when I came to Germany for the first time. One person was going for his vacation to India, and I had got his contact through WhatsApp or something, and he had sublet his apartment, which was a student hostel, to me for 1 month. So it helped me come settle in, find my own place later on, meet a new tenant, renter for a house, and give me a local address for all the official documents to be couriered to. And there are a lot of, especially during the vacation time, especially when people are coming, the time when people are coming for the new admits, that would be the time when most people who are studying go back for their vacation. So there will be a lot of vacancies in that point, so that you can utilize those vacancies for sublets at any location. So
How did you confirm the contract with your friend?
through email he sent me his document which he needs to submit to the.
Okay. So you had some
officials.
proof. Did you make any payments from India? Or?
No, only after coming. Only after
Did
going there, he said he had paid the rent for me beforehand.
Correct.
And I just had to pay it after coming there.
Correct.
Did you find it through Facebook or WhatsApp?
No, it was in our WhatsApp group for Kame, which we had.
Yeah,
There was one senior in that group, and he had mentioned that he was going to India and he was subletting it.
Okay.
So I had contacted him, but his was already gone, so he recommended another friend to me. So I contacted that other guy. He was also going to India at the same time that I was coming there. And I got his WhatsApp number, messaged him.
This is also what I've observed, that people, before they put an ad on Facebook or WG Gazoo,
Correct.
they first write a message in WhatsApp groups, and usually they find the people.
There are always takers for these things. So utilize all those options. And for this thing, as you asked, he sent some of his documents. Who is he leasing it to? My address, my name, which course, all those things. And I just signed and sent it to him, and he had to fill in his details, and he did all the things from his end because I was in India at that time. And it was kind of easy for me.
And the next step, of course, or parallelly that you can keep going, is the visa documents. Again, this is usually not a problem. The German consulate is very well organized, and if you go onto their website and just search for student national visa, you will find a checklist of documents that they have to present, and it is super clear. You will rarely really have any questions about the process. And one tip we can give for the visa process is the German visa requires you to block a certain amount that is equivalent to a year's living expenses in Germany. So at the time we applied, it was around 8,700 euros.
It was increased to 9,000.
Yeah, it might have increased.
No, it was 8,640 for me.
Something.
Yeah, but what happened in my case was like I initially blocked 8,640, and then the next month this law changed and it increased to 9,000 something. Then the embassy called me and asked me to block the additional amount.
Yeah.
So I think right now it's around 9,500.
So the embassy called you.
Yeah, they emailed
that was
me.
very good.
Yeah,
Okay.
emailed me.
Yeah, so it's usually not a problem. Read it like 10 times, make a list of everything. But yeah, so the thing with blocking the amount is you have couple of options. One option that is recommended by the consulate is Deutsche Bank, which I think no student would recommend that as the...
Why?
Because what I found out is like when you unblock the amount from Deutsche Bank, you only get a certain fixed amount per month that you can. There's a withdrawal limit on your bank account.
750 euros.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for instance, I didn't go down that route. I actually used Kotak Mahindra Bank in India to block the money there, and I created a separate normal German account, and I just transferred all the money. So I had the full 8,000 euros with me, like when I never had this withdrawal limit and things like that. So that is something to keep in mind. And also Deutsche Bank just takes much longer to process your documents because they would have to send it from India to Berlin or Hamburg and do background checks, and then it has to come back and all of that.
I think it'll take 6 weeks maybe.
Yeah, and also unblocking it
much.
here, I knew that I created a bank account and in 48 hours I had my funds in my account. Whereas people with Deutsche Bank, they had to wait almost 10 days to unblock their account after having come to Germany.
So we had to bring cash for our expenses.
Yeah. So I think that is anything else that you guys want?
Yeah, even for example, you have two options. If you want to go with Deutsche Bank, you can open an account directly in a German account in any of the branches in Germany. Usually you go with the Hamburg branch, the main office, or you can open an account with the Indian Deutsche Bank, the Indian account in Deutsche Bank, where you have to deposit it like 50,000 or how much? Like
50,000. It was 50,000 when I deposited.
Yeah.
And when I was applying, I thought that was the only way you blocked an account.
No, because
I didn't know about these other methods. Everybody I spoke to, they said go to the Indian Deutsche Bank, get it blocked, then transfer it over there. And
I opened an account in Hamburg directly.
Directly. How did you do that?
I had to post documents to Hamburg and they opened an account for me.
No, like some online thing or something?
No. You just have
Signatures
to...
they mean, no?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
so
where do you get the documents?
Account opening forms you will get online. You have to print them and send them by post with your signature.
Yeah, okay.
And once they receive the post, like I sent it through DHL, so they most probably received it within 2 days. And I received an email that they got my documents. And within a few weeks, my account was opened.
Okay.
I think it took some time also for account opening, but I had enough time on my hands. So
And what were the documents that you sent as proof? Did you send your admission details?
That you'll anyway find.
I don't exactly remember that, but I think it is pretty transparent. You can just go online and check it.
Okay.
And again, so this is the Kotak Mahindra is written on the consulate checklist.
I don't remember.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So even with finances, is go by what is written, and because even in the case that something changes, and the consulate during your visa appointment they ask you something, you can always show them that hey, on your website on this date, this is what was given, and that's why I prepared it this way. And the next step is actually to plan your study, and what I mean by this is. Unlike in India, the program is usually fixed, that each semester you have to do this and you have to finish it within 4 years. There's no way you can move subjects around from one semester to the other. So you actually have a fair bit of flexibility in your master's program. You get to choose what electives to take. You can also choose to attend the lectures in this semester but give the exam for it in the next semester, and you can drop courses and things like that. So takes and all of the course information is put on the university website, so take a little time to decide and plan your course of study. And one thing which was not told to me was that if you have a compulsory internship as part of your program, you will need some time to search for it. It's rarely a instantaneous process, so budget that in. So if you do decide to do the compulsory internship, you might need 2 or maybe 3 months to even search for a internship for the interview process and all of that to get over. And of course there are also student groups like we said before, and you also have student groups by country. So we have Indian students in Aachen and Chinese students. There should probably be a group for each of these countries. So so there you will find students from your course who are currently studying there, and any questions you have about the program you can always direct it to them. And with that, I think this section on the immediately after admission, this section is gets over. So we're coming towards the end of our first podcast episode. Actually took us quite a while. We had to record this over 2 sessions. But the last couple of things are not real questions, but just some tips that I've observed and I've had to learn. I'm just going to share that, and if either of you have anything to add, you can always chime in. So the first section is on the student life, and in my opinion, in Europe and especially in Germany, having the student status really gets you quite a lot of discounts. It's really like there is some value to having the student status economically and things like that. So if you're into sports, most universities have a fantastic sports arena. At least RWTH has, and you get sports courses like for a semester on literally every sport almost, I think. And these are like dirt cheap, I think. I haven't taken them, but do any of you guys know how much? Can you just share like how much it costs?
Yeah, I took a kickboxing class for 15 euros the entire semester.
For the entire semester, yeah. So things like that. And you also have these couple of if you're into traveling, Europe is perfect for traveling because everything's like so close by. So they have these organizations that are built around these weekend trips. For it mainly is for students, but also certain young adults in the working class also do join in occasionally. These are like trips, like the companies are called PM to AM or Studifahrten, and you can always just look up their websites, and they are super active on social media, and they're like really affordable trips that you can make if you like traveling. And also at all the universities in the state of NRW, North Rhine-Westphalian, you also get a student ticket that is valid on all public transport within the entire state. So you just
also in a few cities in Netherlands.
Yeah, right now also in a few cities in Netherlands where we go to watch movies, and also if you want certain mind-altering substances, and so you just had the semester fee that you pay separately. It's a semester contribution that every student makes. Is around 280 euros. You get one of the biggest benefits you get is this this student pass that gets you a lot of things. So many times when you want to travel to like other German cities, what many of us do is we take the train to the boundary of the state and then take a bus or something from there, which you have to pay for. So yeah, do you guys have anything else to add as a student? Like, I'm not someone who parties much. I don't think any of us are, so we probably can't tell you the party scene in Aachen. But
so the thing which I really enjoyed about Germany is, as he suggested, not only sports, there are various club activities in Germany. There is, if you are interested in something like painting or something, or music, you can there's always a set of people who just join in and do that jam sessions. and Rohit himself does yoga sessions and meditation sessions. You arrange your these things with the student organization, and they can hook you up with a certain kind of clubs. And also there are all these student bodies such as BEST. I'm BEST is throughout Europe, right?
Yeah.
Some what's the full form? I forgot.
I don't know. The full-
Some engineering something BEST, and INCAS. INCAS is specifically for Aachen.
Yeah.
And yeah, in your universities there will be like these student bodies. You can go there, volunteer, be a part of a club, be a part of a community. That would be a good place to, I don't know, talk in German with other internationals and get international contacts with people. And yeah, don't just, this is the advice which I got from some seniors, that don't just sit at home and study all the time. Live your life also side by side. You do things that feed your soul. Like that was the thing that made me sane in these 3 years, 6 semesters. Yeah, that is my take on it.
Yeah, and also I would just add that I think in Germany a lot of socializing happens through these clubs. You know, so it's a bit hard to like approach people otherwise. But generally, when you find clubs where people are interested in the same activities that you do, you make very good friends.
For example, like these student organizations would organize breakfasts and nights for of a certain country or something, like Mexican night or Chinese breakfast or something like that, where the student associations of those countries organize these things, but it's open for anyone and a very low entry fee, like €5 or something. So you can go there, you can just interact with people, and that's if you are open for it. And yeah, you can meet new people over there.
I would like to add one point that like I have attended a few parties, and what I've observed is that not even a single German will fiddle around with his or her phone. Like he will pay his or her full attention into a conversation like that, into a party. Like I'm not talking about those parties in the clubs. I'm talking about house parties. Like they don't even take a picture or anything. Like they just start a conversation, and it's very pleasant, I would say. I mean, they of course drink, but not to that extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've met Germans who are who hate drinking beer as well. So yeah, they don't like the taste. So we cannot just generalize, characteristics of a German. It's just like in India, you cannot define who is an Indian.
Yeah. Yeah, and moving on to something related as a student are also student jobs, and it is highly recommended to get, especially if you're lucky you can get something in the course of your study. It's related to what you're studying, so then it also helps you build your resume, and you really get to apply what you learn. And usually these are like the professors, if they have some project funding, they would usually announce them in the class, or there are also universities have websites where people can list their the jobs. But the best is to also just call, because there's so much competition. It's also best to just walk in and ask if it's a good time. You can find out the visiting hours to visit the professor and just walk in and speak to them. That is also something you can do. And as an international student coming from non-EU countries, you can only work 19 hours a week under your student visa. And there are two classes of jobs. So one is called a Hiwi and one is called a Vihi. So a Hiwi is generally given for students who are doing their bachelor's, and their Vihi is given for students who have already completed their bachelor's. Although this depends like on how much funding the professor has and things like that. So just see that you're also aware that you could get the pay scale for the Vihi is a little bit more than the Hiwi. So just you can always keep that in mind when you speak to the professor about it. And yeah, that's what I have written. Do you guys have anything else? Okay, you also have non-academic jobs, like you can wait in a restaurant, you can wash the dishes. You also get hired part-time in like to work in factories during the high demand areas.
Yeah, there are these manpower service companies known as personal Dienstleister. In Aachen, there are a few, and if you go get a contract with them, they would give you work at factories for like chocolate factories or some bread factory. I have worked in a bread factory and I worked in a logistics factory where you work 8 hours a day and they pay you for around 9.2 euros per hour. So one day you get 72 euros. So in 2 weeks you can get quite enough money to pay your rent. You basically take care of your expenses and save some also.
Yeah.
And this is the thing is you have to decide how much of how important is it to do these things, because it would take a huge amount of strain, physical labor, and you work 8 hours a day over there. You can't do anything else later after coming back. You just want to eat something and sleep, because it's really like physically challenging to do these things. So if you have planned to do something else, like learn something or do some other kind of work afterwards, you like a human being would not be able to do it, because it's very very strenuous and challenging, and you want to take a rest, like don't lose your health on it. So decide how much you want to do it, and decide how much the pros and cons of both sides, and then take up these works. And you want to talk about the tax thing?
It's coming.
Okay. Yeah, that's it from my end.
Okay.
Shrujal has nothing to contribute for Hivi.
And
there's something called work student also.
yeah.
The work student is where you work as a student worker. It's different from a Hivi. You work as a student worker in an industry, not in some institute. You work as in an industry. You go there.
It's a normal job but reduced hours basically.
It's also like you can negotiate. It could be 16 hours a week.
Yeah.
Or 20 hours a week. I know one guy who just 8 hours a week.
Yeah.
But that is also a very good experience. You are basically assisting a company in their projects, and it's good to put on your resume. So but again, you have to start applying early on. You might get, you might not get. German language skills help.
Yeah.
Other skills regarding projects, whether it is using programming or your knowledge in ANSYS or other CAE softwares, all these things helps. And there are enough opportunities for student workers in the in cities here nearby. You can also be a student worker in another city in NRW. Like if you are in NRW, you can daily go there for 2 days a week and work there and come back and finish your classes the other next 3 days. So these are some avenues you can look into where you can gain both experience and earn some money on the side, and go for these things.
I would like to add something regarding Hivi. Like, so the one thing that you guys need to have in mind is that you are doing a job along with your studies, right? So in a Hivi, you are expected to do certain tasks. So you have to manage your time really well. You need to have a very good, let's say, overview of your study, let's say, academic progress as well. Like because many times what happens is you tend to make contract of, let's say, 16, 19 hours per week, and then you're not able to focus on your studies and exams, and then you tend to deregister those exams, and that just piles up your exams in later semesters. And I've seen people who have extended their studies for like 6 months or 1 year because of this mistake. So just learn how to manage your time well. I think you can easily discuss things with your supervisor
Yeah.
because it's very friendly here.
Yeah.
If you think that you're not able to manage your tasks along with your studies, you can just discuss with your supervisor to change the tasks, or you can reduce down the number of hours in your contracts.
You can even negotiate, like if you find out that you have exams in 1 month,
Yeah.
you can start working
Yeah.
extra hours in the beginning of the first week of the month, so that by the time your exams start, you can cut down your hours or even not go for the entire week.
Yeah.
So that overall, for the period of the contract, your hours are justified at the end when you get at the end of the contract. So
Yeah.
you can do these kinds of negotiations. I'm not sure whether every professor would agree with it, but most professors are understanding, and you can negotiate terms and conditions so that when you have exams coming up, you can say that I don't want to do the heavy now, but you can either work, preferably you work in the beginning before your exam starts, more hours in the beginning, and then compensate later after the exam ends, because
Yeah,
the-
but a Hiwi doesn't work with a professor. Like they most probably work with
PhD.
PhD students, right?
Exactly,
And
yeah.
professors don't even know who is working at the institute most of the times. Like the PhD students are the ones who hire the Hiwis.
Yeah, but
Most of them.
I heard that these negotiations would happen with the professor's consent only.
Professor doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
No,
About
like the
TVs.
signature or something.
No, nothing. Professor doesn't know about your existence.
Yeah, okay. Then
Yeah.
then the PhD person.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the-
Your
the
supervisor.
negotiations, basically your supervisor.
Yeah, but
Like he-
negotiate with the
yeah.
supervisor, like
Yeah.
not the professor, the supervisor.
Yeah. And the last section of our podcast is on just some miscellaneous tips that we really couldn't categorize into something specifically. So the first one, which unfortunately all of us learned very late into our study period, was in Germany there is apparently a law which says that if you have paid tuition fees for your program, you can claim them as a tax deductible expense. So when you get a job once you graduate, what happens is your taxable amount in the first year gets reduced by a certain amount depending on your tuition fees. So
And one more thing, which I want to tell you guys, after you get a job, you can still claim that amount in your this thing. It's not over.
no, it's over if you have already claimed it while studying.
No, it's not over. Like once you start working, and you can still claim those taxes. I talked to a friend. He said you can do it.
Oh, okay.
So it's
But-
don't lose hope.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
but what if someone
As
like took a loan and the loan the bank in India directly transferred the money to the university? Then in that case, how do we claim the tax? Like, and there are some technicalities
but
that we
yeah,
need
just,
to
just
clarify.
know that the
But-
tuition fee, it can be filed as a tax deductible expense. So if you're doing a student job and you actually file for taxes, make sure to put that claim into the tax file. Or what you can also do is there's actually no rule for you to file for tax returns in your 2 years of studying. You can club all of your expenses and income during your study period and adjust it with your first year of salary. This is of course not 100% legal advice, so please do your research, but it's just more of an awareness that something like this exists. So this is what this is, like a public service.
But just a very stupid question. Like you get a tax return if you pay tax on it, but we haven't paid tax on the fees. Have we?
I think it's included.
No, it's considered as a tax deductible expense. So this is like if you are studying as like a business,
Okay.
it's an expense to your
yeah,
study
okay.
period, which
Like-
gets like a
Okay.
fraction of it.
Yeah,
Even you can buy clothes. And
Okay,
say
got
it's-
it, got
It
it.
was necessary
Got
for
it.
my studies.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
buy
got it.
clothes, to buy winter
Yeah,
jacket,
yeah.
and you can claim that also as
Yeah.
a tax.
Yeah,
deductible.
So for example, you are
Expense.
so let's say the tax bracket is 10,000 euros per year. So if you are earning 13,000 euros, and then you can say that okay, my expense
Correct.
per year was 4,200 euros. So
Yeah.
now you are earning less than 10,000, so you don't have to pay taxes. So you'll get
Yeah.
the extra.
I mean, yeah,
amount
you don't
as a
get the
return.
full 4,200, but maybe from that 13,000, they reduce 2,000 euros and you only pay 11,000 in tax.
I mean, whatever the tax slab is, whatever
Yeah.
the percentage of that 4,200
Something like that.
is.
Something like
Yeah.
that, yeah. So yeah, just contact a tax expert or also Google and figure things out. That is, definitely keep that in mind. The other thing is related to so related to tax is keep all educated related bills and receipts. So for instance, if you buy a tablet computer with a stylus, which we also highly recommend, at least I do, because a lot of the professors use a lot of these slides which they upload one day before the lecture, so you can just download them on your iPad or Windows tablet and you can just make notes while on the slides as the professor is teaching. And a lot of the at least the newer buildings, newer classrooms, they also have charging ports under the table, so you can also you have power access and things like that. But say you bought a computer in Germany, you can actually keep the receipt of that and claim that as a tax deductible expense because you use it quite a lot in your in your study. But with things like internet, you can also claim that, but you have to say in a day I use it 4 hours of internet goes into my my research this thing, so only that percentage of your internet bill gets sent into your tax. So there's actually quite a lot of advantages that you can do. So if you're interested and you want to pursue that, just find a good tax expert. The other annoying thing for me as someone who's super tech savvy is the fact that Germany still uses a lot of cash, so be prepared for a lot of jingling pockets that announce your arrival whenever you arrive. But so also if you're coming into Germany, especially for the first few days, carry enough cash just for emergencies, because at least at the time of recording of this podcast, cash is the king. So it's acceptable and accepted in almost all places over there. And the other thing respected to arrival is preferably try not to arrive on a weekend. Saturday is still okay, but avoid Sunday as much as possible, because what happens is on Sunday literally everything is closed, the frequency of public transport is lesser, and in case of some emergency it just makes things harder. So preferably arrive on a weekday. That's usually my...
And most tickets are also cheaper on weekdays.
Yeah.
Flight tickets are cheaper on weekdays rather than weekends.
Correct, yeah.
So look into that.
You can do that.
And one more thing is, once you come here, there's this Deutsche radio tax, which you would have to, when you register your name for the first time at any Rathaus, city registration, you have to register your address. Every time you move, you have to register your address. These things are some bureaucratic procedures that you need to follow over here. When you register your address for the first time, you would get a letter saying your it's like a social, not a social contribution, some kind of Beitrag. It's a contribution for something, for Deutsche Radio.
Yeah.
Where
Basically, all electronic devices, including mobile phone, TV, internet, they use the radio frequency spectrum,
Exactly.
and that's a tax on that infrastructure.
Yes,
So, yeah.
and you would have to pay for 3 months. It is 52 euros.
Yeah.
You can keep it like a quarterly.
Yeah, or a
payment
monthly.
method.
You have a couple of options.
Yeah,
You can
there
pay
are
it
options,
monthly,
and
quarterly,
there
6
are also
months,
options where it can be directly debited from your account also.
Yeah.
And if you are living with roommates, you can split it among yourself. But I am. It's still in my name, and even when I left that house, it was being deducted, and there's a lot of annoying problems associated with it. The number, if you call their service helpline, nobody picks up the phone. I had a lot of trouble changing the number when I had to change my address. Yeah, but that's how things work over here.
There are some bureaucratic stuff that won't
Yeah.
go your way. But even if you don't use a radio or you don't have a TV, you have to pay
You
this.
still
This
have
is
to pay.
I mean,
obligatory.
you're using the radio infrastructure when you use cellular.
I mean, these
devices.
are the questions that come up to the kind of beginners, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And the last point that I have is, if you want to do an internship, find courses that have compulsory internships as part of the program. That just makes it a bit easier to get an internship, because if you have a compulsory internship as part of the course, there's a German law that states that the company can pay you less than the minimum wage for the internship. So, for instance, in our program, we had to do minimum of 9 weeks of compulsory internship. So, for those duration of 9 weeks, the companies pay you a slightly lesser rate. And say you do an internship for longer than 9 weeks, then you get bumped up to the normal entering salary for a student. So, yeah, that is all that I have. Is there anything else that you guys want to add?
I think also since it is compulsory for you to do the internship and you will get a grade, you don't get a grade, right?
You don't get a grade, you just get passed.
Pass off.
Okay, I at first I thought that you get a grade. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else.
Okay, so finally we are at end of our first ever podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and if you have any ideas or you just want to share something or any feedback that you have, we are most definitely welcome to that. Any constructive criticism, destructive criticism is also welcome. We will just refer you to our resident stand-up comedian.
But be aware that the destructive criticism will be used in a stand-up material.
Yeah, exactly. With reference to your online internet handle. So please do share it. If you found this valuable, definitely share it with other people who might find it valuable or who are bored and have nothing else to do. But yeah, I think that is it. Anything else? Final things that you guys want to add?
Yeah, you
All the best.
have listened to this podcast of three people ranting and talking and giving you some constructive feedback. First of all, thank you for your patience. And second of all, good luck if you are still wanting to continue in your studies. Or after listening to us, you said, I don't want this shit. Good luck to you too then also.
Yeah, I would just say that be open to new experiences. Like this time in Germany will be one of the best times that you will have in your life. So all the best, guys. And we are looking forward to welcome you.
If our schedules permit. Or if you promise to bring some really good stuff for us.
And if you are still and after listening to us, if you are still willing to do masters in Kame, we would like to have a podcast with you also.
So yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
it. Thanks once again. All the best, and we. I don't know how to end it.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, end.